Right, guys, we are back. First proper podcast of the newish season, and tonight I've got my show regular James. Right, how you doing, James?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you both? Good evening.
Yeah, not too bad, all things considered of our club and everything that's been going off recently. But yeah, not too bad. Enjoying the summer for what it is. Especially last Sunday with the cricket. Something a sport I don't really watch, but hey, that provided more drama and excitement than what Arsenal have ever done in 16 years. And obviously, I've got Harry Symeou from the Chronicles of a Gooner making his debut on my channel. How you doing, Harry?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Thanks for inviting me. How are you guys?
Yeah, okay, Harry, thanks.
Good, good.
I think we need to sort of first subject's got to be the main subject of this week, really. The campaign against Dan Kroenke and the Kroenkes in general. We care do you. Um, Harry, I believe you was behind the open letter as well that got sent to the Kroenkes back on Monday.
I wasn't behind the open letter. I was invited into the
Remove
group
yourself.
after the letter was shown. So there was a lot of work, from my understanding, that was going on in the background.
Mm.
A load of people were working on the campaign and looking at the best way to do it, etc., etc. Lots of the names that you've seen probably on the open letter, recognizable blogs and people that are well known in the Arsenal community, they all got together, they come up with this open letter and they put it out. I was invited into the group after the letter went out, shortly after. So I've been trying to help in the background since then. But yeah, I can't take any credit for the beginning part. That beginning phase was all down to those guys, and they've done a brilliant job, because I believe today the petition has hit 100,000 signatures, which is incredible. And I mean, it prompted a response, didn't it, from Josh Kroenke? It might not have been exactly what we wanted to hear in many ways, but it is a response, and it is dialogue, and that was kind of what they were after. And so, job done.
Yeah, and also just hitting on the response as well. It wasn't. It was like the typical what we've heard before from Ivan Gazidis before he was at the club. We have these ambitions. This is what we want to be. This is what we want to do, but not actually explaining it. And I believe the interview that was recorded on the Arsenal media was done at half time on the Monday. Was it Monday's game? Or our first game in the USA? But it was literally just like the same old. Be excited. We are making movements. We are making these big movements, these exciting signings. Nothing's been done and dusted yet, but it's there pretty much. We want to be competing to win the title, to win the Champions League. This, that, it was just like the same. It didn't really address the main issues in the opening net that was sent to them about, for example, the attendances, the ticket pricing, the fact that.
I do think, though, I do think, in fairness, we've got to be a little bit fair in the sense that they did respond really, really quickly. And like you said, the interview was conducted at half time. So how much he was going to cover in 15 minutes, I don't know. And I didn't expect him to cover every single point in there. But I do think that, the hope is that in the future there'll be more dialogue and he will address those points. But I mean, it was a response. I was pleased to see a response. Like you said, it was the kind of media spin that we always get. But what do you expect from big corporate billionaires? That was all we were ever going to get. I'm sure a PR team has sat down and come up with that and fed it to Josh. I don't know what James thinks, but that's how I see it.
No, I think Harry makes some great points, but the thing that lingers in the back of my mind is I think under Kroenke, we are not his priority. His priority for him is the LA Rams. And I think until that changes, I don't think we'll see significant progress in that respect. I mean, I believe the LA Rams are building a new stadium that's like state of the art, which is costing an arm and a leg in one of the most expensive cities in the world, in Los Angeles. And I just think as an owner, I think he's got multiple franchises as well. He's not just concentrating on one. And I think we're in for a long old season as well. And as I stated on previous pods, it's good that, especially in pre-season, that the youth players are getting a look in and they're growing in confidence. You could see that today or the early hours of this morning. But as I said towards the end of last season, it's not just about spending money; it's about identifying players better, not just in terms of the positions we need, but casting the net wide, and being in a position to interview players and managers on a regular basis, like I do. You often hear about when players change clubs, about the decisive factor was the club showed how much they wanted to sign the player and how enthusiastic they were. And so I think Arsenal have just got to identify players more in positions more, and to stop the problem of average players on very high wages on long contracts. Just take a little bit of time and study the length of a contract offered, the wages that go with it as well, to make sure that you don't have a position where you've got average players on long contracts where you can't get rid of them because nobody else wants to sign them because the wages are too high. And I just think we could have been a bit more proactive in this window. I think Martinelli's been a very good signing so far, but he's also very, very young. And it's the same with Tierney as well. We put in a derisory bid for Chilwell a couple of years back. Now, I know hindsight is a wonderful thing, but if we had put in a good bid for Chilwell, we would now have the best left back in the league. But again, it was deemed derisory and was never going to be accepted by Leicester. And I believe his value now is between 40 and 50 million.
Yeah, I was just talking off it. It's, you compare us to, for example, Atletico recently in the last couple of days. Out of nowhere, they identified Kieran Trippier from Denmark down the road as their new right back. They put their interest out there. They made a bid. It wasn't, and they were told how much was wanted, and they matched it. Went, okay, there you go. It's all done and dusted. Over for medical. He's now there today, having training for his first training session. Where it's like with us, it's like for Kieran Tierney, for example, we offered, I think it's £15 million plus add-ons over the terms of this contract if he was to sign, and it was like, if certain targets are met as well, this, that, and the other, it wasn't like, well, give us him now, we'll give you this, and then boom, over the next year, bam, bam, we'll give you the rest. And even the most recent bid, was it 25 million? 5 million of that, or 7 mil, whatever the reports want to believe, was in add-ons. Again, as Celtic said, come back with what we want, and you can have him. And we take forever to do it though. Like the initial bid was like 3.5 weeks ago, and the most recent was on Saturday, Sunday night. Why does the club take so long after being told what is needed to actually go and do it? And look at Zaha as well. We've relied on Zaha to put a transfer request in today, effectively, to try and get us a better bargaining offer for us. It's just frustrating. What do you make of it, Harry, with the transfer side of things?
With the transfer side of things, I think that we were never going to do significant business before Eddie was in. So I wasn't surprised that, it's taken so long to do things. I think with Arsenal, the problem we've got is that because there is so much, attention on this football club in terms of having a huge fan base, having a massive presence on social media, I feel like journalists write things to get clicks. And there's a lot of stories that fly around that wind people up, essentially, but actually, is there any substance to them? Probably not. So I'm not overly, with the transfer window, I will judge it at the end of the window. I will look at the window and say, right, what do I think about it? But at this moment in time, I do believe that Arsenal are working on transfers. I'm as frustrated as anybody else that they've not been done yet. But I think we've got to be realistic and understand that Edu's only come in, a week ago, a week and a half ago. So because of that, I think that was always going to be a problem. Of course, the pre-season tour creates other issues in the sense of logistics. The players are away. The directors are out there with them, or they have to fly back and forward to do deals. Who's been left on the ground to complete things? There's lots of different factors to take into this. So I think we will make at least 2 or 3 signings this summer. Whether they're the signings we need to get us back in the Champions League remains to be seen. But whilst I'm as frustrated as everybody else, I kind of get why it's taken this long. And I think that it's, you know, when you look at the rest of the market and how slow that has been, I'm not overly concerned by the timings at the minute.
Okay, before we move on quickly, there's not a question, but a statement in the chat from Winston. He's basically saying, has Josh made a rod for his own back from his response to the open letter, saying for the fans to be excited? Because now, if something happens, that could come back and bite him on the backside, basically. And it'll just prove the point to some of the skeptics that it was just a spin of the same old, just to try and keep us quiet, sort of thing. James.
Yeah, quite possibly, but it depends on the interpretation as well of the exciting signings. Are you talking about in a commercial sense? Are you talking in terms of big names, for example? It's a big old world out there. You know, I'm pleased on a personal level that we've dipped our toe into the South American market again, because I think that was long overdue. And you know, it's about scouting properly and looking to see what players are available, and also a very important part as well, characters. What characters are we bringing in? Are we bringing in characters that are willing to win, that are willing to fight for the shirt, that want to be successful at Arsenal? Or are we bringing in characters that are just wanting to live the London life, you know, don't really have much motivation and fire to want to actually win something of note? So it's about the whole judging that properly. And I think Winston makes a good point. He could well make a rod for his own back, but I think that will come down in terms of the description of exciting signings. That will come down to interpretation, I think, at the end.
Harry, what your thoughts, response to
that? I kind of agree with what James has said, to be honest. I think that you know, it's a hard one, because that statement, you feel like he wouldn't have made it without there being something in the pipeline. But then on the other hand, you know, I was one of the first people that tweeted out, essentially, as soon as it was made, that has Emery been told to say what he said in his press conference to try and deflect some of the scrutiny on the Kroenke family? I don't know. But then the more I think about it, the more I think that if they were making this up just to keep the heat off their backs, they're, you know, like James said, they'll be giving a rod for their own back, because ultimately people are going to get onto them when it doesn't come to fruition. So I'm not entirely sure, you know, whether I think there will be signings, like I've already said, but how big they are and whether the Kroenkes and Emery's idea of expensive is the same as mine and yours is a completely different story.
Okay. Yeah, the only thing I've put my 10 pence on it. The only thing that sort of I'm holding off at the moment is when obviously Emery came out and said what he said, because I looked back in January when he pretty much outed the whole club and said, "No, we ain't got no money to buy anyone because of the wage bill. All I can do is loans." Whereas in years gone by, we were told by our previous manager and Ivan Gazidis, etc., there's always something there. We could, if the right person came along, all that, and the same old sort of. Whereas Emery's straight out the back in January, he's like, "No, all I can do is loans." Just before we went off on this tour as well, we had a bit of a drama with our club captain, Mr. Laurent Koscielny, deciding to not go on the tour or play for Arsenal again, basically, because he believes he's been forced to stay at the club, basically. And from what I can make out myself, is that the club they're not forced him to stay, they just want to get some money for him, some funds. To just basically get back the 10 mil they spent on him back 9 years ago. So it depends on who you want to believe. But at the same time, both the club and the player could have kept this completely private. They didn't. They could have done a in terms of him not going to the States, say he's picked up an injury or something like that, and just kept it in house. Because the last thing we need right now is something like this coming to the surface. James, what did you actually make of the whole situation as a whole?
I thought, as a club captain, it's very disappointing. you wouldn't have got the likes of Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry and Tony Adams especially acting in a way that Laurent Koscielny has acted. You know, we as Arsenal fans, I think the whole spectrum, we take the captaincy very seriously. We're very proud of our captains. We've had a good history of having great captains. But I think Koscielny's let himself down, really. He's had 9 years of service. He was signed from Lorient, you know, which if you want to win a league, you don't really go hunting in the French second division at the time, do you? But that it is what it is. And I think he's made over 300 appearances for Arsenal. But when I think of him, when I think of what I say in terms of legacy of what he's gone through at the club, yes, he's had some very good moments in terms of stable defending. But I say moments. When I think of the costly moments, like the League Cup final in 2011 and the semi-final against Atletico, and the thing that really upset me last season, watching him play, was his body language every single time we conceded a goal. It was this every time we conceded a goal, his head would drop, or he'd throw his arms out, or he'd look to insinuate another defender who you're trying to build a collective unit with. And I think it's best for all now if he moves on, and the situation is resolved very quickly. And finally, as well, you think of the young players who have been given squad numbers and are taking part in the United States and making their first steps on the path to becoming a professional player for Arsenal. For club captain, who in the past, likes of Adams, for example, I remember watching a documentary with Matthew Upson, where Matthew Upson said, I played alongside Tony Adams. And before we kicked off, Tony Adams is telling Matthew Upson, right, you tell me where you want me to stand. You tell me what you want me to do. And Upson was a little bit shocked. He was like, oh, I can't believe Tony Adams is saying that to me. And you think of those young players in America, the club captain of the club is not around to encourage or to cajole or to give any compliments in that respect. I think it's a sad episode, really, and I hope it gets resolved as soon as possible.
Harry, what about yourself? What was your thoughts on the whole situation?
So, I was disappointed when I heard that Koscielny had refused to go. Of course I was. I think every Arsenal fan was. And what James has said is absolutely spot on in regards to the fact that the club captain shouldn't be doing things like that. He shouldn't be going on strike. Really, really disappointing stuff. However, what I will say is I don't think that Laurent Koscielny woke up one morning and had a complete personality transplant. And throughout his time at Arsenal, you can criticise his performances, you can criticise lapses in concentration, etc. during key moments, but he's never displayed a bad attitude as a player. So it leads me to believe that there is more to this story than we're being told. And I'm not saying that I know this for a fact or, that there is much evidence to back this up, but I genuinely believe that Laurent Koscielny has gone to the club and asked to be allowed to move on for a number of reasons. David Ornstein reported that it was because he was unhappy with the direction of the club and that he was struggling for fitness and that he felt his recovery had been mismanaged. And if you think back to around about December when he returned to the team, he was playing a hell of a lot of games. I remember he came in against Southampton away, if I'm not mistaken. And, we didn't have another fit centre-half in the squad. And he was absolutely run ragged, torn to pieces. And for, lots of times throughout the season, we saw him on his knees, struggling to continue in games, but battling on. So for me, I just feel like Laurent Koscielny has asked to leave. I feel like the way he's reacted probably signifies that the club at the time agreed to allow him to leave. And perhaps now, because the transfer window hasn't necessarily gone the way we wanted it to, in the sense of we've not got a direct replacement in, that I think they've had a change of heart, which on the one hand is a good thing because the club need to put the club first. So I get that. But if you've promised the player he can leave, then you need to honour that. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but that's just my feeling. I just get the feeling that there's not much there is a lot more to this than we're being told. Now, Arsenal fans will tell you that they're happy that the club were transparent about this and come out and told us. I think that's absolute nonsense because the club haven't told us what's happened. The club have released a statement that was no longer than 2 sentences. It was literally 2 sentences, which explained zero detail and told us only that Koscielny had refused to go and that they were disappointed in his actions. That is it. So if you think that the club have been transparent here, they haven't. They've just been a little bit slyer in the way they've gone around it. So for me, both parties are to blame here. But of course, we won't know the actual facts until probably further on down the line. But it's just a feeling from me.
Yeah, I've got to agree with him. Yeah, and obviously, as you said, they haven't really been transparent. All they said was he isn't coming. They're disappointed, and that was it pretty much. And a day later, we're taking disciplinary action, and that's it. Whereas he's been more, him and his agents and other ex-players that have been at the club that now have moved on, are all back in his corner. But
It
obviously,
wouldn't be the first time we've heard of a lack of ambition at Arsenal, would it?
No. Well, when Van Persie left, he wrote an open letter to the fans explaining, I had a meeting with previous manager Arsene Wenger and Ivan Gazidis, outlined where I saw the club going, and they had a completely different ideology behind it. Hence why he left to go to Man United. And it's no coincidence he goes to Man United and they win a league title.
Exactly.
Also with Van Persie, it was quite apparent for quite some time, especially when he was speaking to Dutch media here, that he was going to leave. And when he would go on international duty, he would in some cases be chastised by Dutch media, who would basically say to him when he was on international duty with the Netherlands, you haven't won anything. And he was very polite. He was never impolite about Arsenal. He never criticised Arsenal, but I think his desire to actually win something before his career ends was too big for him to turn down.
Yeah, but it's just like you said. No, it's no coincidence. It's not the first time we've heard this. It's just, again, as an Arsenal fan, as we are Arsenal fans, it's just frustrating to hear this again and again and again. We just want to we want things to turn around and go back towards where they once were. 40, these will be 16 years this season, and come maybe 16 years since we won the league. Who would have thought back then we would have gone 16 years? But then again, who would have thought Liverpool go 30 years? We're now 31. Yeah. It does seem that obviously, whatever's going on there's no coming back for Koscielny in the sense of how the club are saying that we're taking disciplinary action. So if we're taking disciplinary action against the player, he's going to lose the club captaincy, we assume. So, Harry, who would be your club captain going forward? Vice captain.
This is a really tough one because I don't think we've got a single player who's captain material. But if I had to pick from the current squad, I know a lot of people talk about Hector Bellerin getting it. And I don't think he's necessarily a leader on the pitch, but I also understand why people say that, because Hector Bellerin has displayed incredible qualities and leadership off of the pitch, in the sense that he's addressed lots of, really controversial issues like racism, and various other things, and he's been really vocal and brave in that sense. So for me, he's a good example, as in he shows the club in a very good light, and I can understand why commercially someone who's into his fashion is like a bit of an icon, makes sense. But on the pitch, it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm kind of like on the fence about that one. I think Granit Xhaka is probably an option. I think that Unai Emery is quite keen on Granit Xhaka, given the way he's been talking. He gave him the armband yesterday as well. So yeah, I think that Granit Xhaka is probably the one. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with this because they don't like him, etc., and they don't particularly rate him. And I get their concerns, but we're not exactly spoilt for choice here. So I'd go probably Granit Xhaka, Hector Bellerin.
Who would be a vice captain in case of injury to Xhaka during the season?
Yeah, probably Bellerin then. I'd probably say Bellerin. Okay. Even maybe, maybe Lacazette, maybe Socrates could have a go from time to time. I don't know. But I guess that's it. We're not exactly sport for choice. That's the problem.
I don't want the five captain thing again.
No. 5 captains that did nothing.
Harry makes a great point about hardly being sport for choice, and also following on from what you said about the 5 captaincy thing. That's the only thing of Emery last season that really stood out for me in terms of what's going on here, in terms of a 5 captaincy kind of thing. I'm going to go a bit rogue, and I'm going to suggest Rob Holding. I know he's very young, but when he's fit and when he's come back, if you think of his temperament as a young player, and you think how key he was in the unbeaten run at the start of the season, which was 22 games, I think he's got some great qualities. And I know people might say he's very young and inexperienced and that kind of thing, but Matthijs de Ligt captained Ajax at the age of 19. I'm not trying to compare in terms of quality of player, but I'm just saying when you give a young player the opportunity, and he can either take it and he can relish the opportunity. I would go for Holding. I know it's a little bit rogue and a little bit out there, but that would be my choice. And as a vice captain, yeah, I think possibly Xhaka. I don't. You wonder if a captaincy would help Xhaka. I mean, I think he's had moments in his Arsenal tenure where he's tried too hard, really, and he's seemingly booked every single game in some cases. But you think of his international experience as well. I think if you give him an armband, you might see a different side of him.
As you both said, we're not exactly spoiled for choice, and that again, it's not the first time we've said that as a club. I think the last time we were really spoiled for choice was back in the early noughties with the Invincibles, the 2000s to 2006 era. From there onwards, we haven't really had players you could say, yes, that person could be the club captain. They can lead by example in every single way possible. They can drag a team from the depths of absolute obscurity in the sense of results going against them, and drag the players up to get a result. And it's also the captains. We got back to Tony Adams. I've said this before on the podcast. Lee Dixon mentioned his first North London derby at White Hart Lane in '89. How he was just sitting there doing his own business, and then all of a sudden the likes of Adams, Baldy, and others that come up through the ranks at Arsenal or knew what the North London derby meant, out of nowhere got him against the wall and said, "You're not from around here, but you will learn in the next 90 minutes what the North London derby means to the fans, and if you don't, basically God help you." We can't really do that nowadays, but also at the same time, we don't have them sort of characters that could. Apart from you can argue that on the bench side of it as a coach, Freddie Lundberg, because was part of that era that learnt from the likes of Adams, Keown, Symeou, and all that when he first came in, what the North London derby, things like that meant, and what the big games meant to the fans. Maybe he could have a role in that during the season, and certainly help Emery pick these players up in dire situations at half time or whatever. My captain, I'm torn between Xhaka, Holding, or Lacazette, and one of them three. Xhaka wouldn't be ideal because of what we've seen last season, but maybe if he got captaincy as a full-time basis, that might give him that sort of, not only just with more responsibility, but that personal pride and, as a whole, sort of pick him up a bit more, to give his all in every game, not be so hit and miss. I don't know. Obviously, I've just mentioned Freddie Lundberg. Emery came out today and said that Lundberg's had a massive impact since being promoted to the first team as one of his co-assistants, saying that obviously certain youth players he knows about more than what Emery would know about, and it's been proven in the pre-season. Harry, you was one of the, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate ones this morning in one sense because of how early it was, not in terms of the result, how early the game was. You got to watch the entire game. What did you make of the players, especially the younger players that came on?
It was a really interesting game because Arsenal started with quite a senior team, quite a strong team. Joe Willock was in there from the start alongside Granit Xhaka, and I thought he did pretty well. Sat alongside him, he was pretty disciplined, and that's kind of what you want to see from Granit Xhaka's partner, because we know that he tends to go walkabout sometimes, and often his mobility is exposed and things like that. But Joe Willock did really well, and then Arsenal took the lead. Bayern Munich came back, and Bayern Munich were well on top after that because at half time, Niko Kovac made 11 substitutions. So he completely freshened up the side. He had Coman, Lewandowski, and Gnabry all come on, and they were tearing us apart. Maitland-Niles and Kolasinac, who was at left back in the second half, were really, really struggling. But then Unai Emery made those changes around about 9 minutes from time, where he brought on Saka, he brought on John Jules and Nketiah, and it just injected some energy into this team. And it wasn't necessarily because, you know, technically they were setting the world on fire. It was more a case of they were hassling the Bayern players, they were pressing, and what they didn't obviously have in experience, they made up for in, you know, desire. And Nketiah dispossessed Sula on the edge of the box, had a good chance to get Arsenal back in front. But then there was a nice little bit of interchange in play in the box. John Jules put the ball across, and Eddie Nketiah was there to tap it in. So I don't want to get carried away by the young players. You know, they've given Emery something to think about, and it's great. But what you also have to think about here is this was the last 10 minutes of a very early pre-season friendly, and tired legs played a huge part in this game. And it's really difficult to judge players accurately in this kind of environment in tournaments like the Champions Cup. But, you know, the signs are positive. So we should be looking to those players, especially if we don't have the transfer funds that we need necessarily to go out and buy replacements. So there's positives there. There's lots of things for Unai Emery to think about. And I've been saying it all summer. I think that Freddie Ljungberg's appointment was as a result of Arsenal's direction slightly changing and the focus being on those young players. Who better to bring them into the first team and nurture them than their mentor of the last year?
Also, it's no coincidence as well that the second he got promoted, obviously, to the first team this summer, as we all know now, that quite a handful of the youth players that he's worked with have been promoted to the first team this summer.
Yep.
He looks to be given a chance. Even Reece Nelson's been given a new squad number, but he's also been told, no, you're not going out on loan. You're staying here. We'll give you the chance. James, what about yourself?
I think it's exciting for the young players as well. I mean, we've always had a good youth academy going back, especially for all the years that I've been an Arsenal fan. You know, we even when we had in the early 90s world-class players, we still produced players that went on to play at Premier League standard. And I think, as Harry says, with their mentor being alongside the manager, helping to guide them, and you can see with the confidence coming through and young players, you know, getting their first stripes, as it were, as an Arsenal player. You know, as we know only too well, it's a long old season. And I think it would be good for the club and good for the squad to have a freshness with young players, but they've got to be given sufficient opportunities to play in their rightful positions, and not so much cameos here and cameos there. Try to change it up a little bit, because as we know only too well, it's a long old season. You know, we're going to be fighting on in the league and FA Cup and the League Cup and Europa League, you know, and there's going to be many different changes and many different lineups. But, you know, as long as they're there and they're willing to play and there's opportunities for them, I'm sure these young players will take them. And it's about finding a balance, because another thing we've got to do this season to help us go forward, in my opinion, is we've got to find a settled side and stick with it. I mean, with our back line, for example, that's changed on a regular basis almost. You know, we've got to make inroads now to start the basis of building a solid foundation of a settled side. Because if you want to go forward and improve even more, you know, if you're only making maybe 2 changes a game, for example, or you've got 90% of a starting lineup playing for following Premier League match, for example, that can help. And it's got to slowly and surely become even more competitive, because we've got a big season ahead of us.
Also, sticking on the pre-season side, you know, I know it's been 2 games. Do we look into the fact he seems to be not wanting to play a back full in his first 2 games, or is that just did you mean that's a smoke screen for the season going into it? Because I prefer if you went for a flat back four with what we've got at the moment. Before any signs are made, this, that, or the other. I think it's no coincidence he's going after other wingers as well, along with Reece Nelson, because he wants to play the formation that he wanted to play last season. It's a 4-2-3-1. But obviously, without the wingers, he couldn't do that last year, along with injuries that got involved. And I think he just tried different things. It did backfire at the end of the season. It did cost us, but I think he needs to, as you said, pick a formation and stick with it. And but a part of that formation is just play this flat back four.
But I also think in his first season, Ryan, he's got every right to tactically try to find out what this squad is capable of. And he inherited a squad who were not very tactically flexible, because the majority have been in a comfort zone for years on end, where when they didn't play well, they were still picked. And this squad was never challenged to go three at the back, or to play 4-2-3-1, or to change formation almost maybe 3 times in 10 days, for example, or maybe even in the second half. This squad was never confronted with such a challenge, and I think Emery had every right to find out what his players in the squad could and couldn't do, and he wanted to see what players he's got at his disposal and how tactically flexible they actually are. And I think with these young kids, especially under the tutelage of Lundberg, I think they'll end up being more tactically flexible. But we've got to go from our strengths and our qualities and not focus too much on opponents. We've got to find a strong basis and hopefully start the season well, because we've got some spicy fixtures in the beginning, also with a North London derby too. In September, you've got the start of the Europa League as well. You've only got to look at the teams in the qualifying rounds already to know what teams are coming through. The Europa League is going to be harder than last season. And the biggest difference in Europe, in my opinion, in the last 15 to 20 years is the difference between the seasoned teams and the unknown European teams is decreasing year on year, because these the smaller European teams are being coached better. They're being open to new ideas with different managers coming in. You've only got to look at different squads all over Europe. You've got players that come from all over. So everybody mixes together and brings in their experience. But we've got to decide on a formation and a starting lineup and try to build a competitive team and a competitive squad, and be ready for the long hard slog which is going to be our season.
Harry, what yourself?
Yeah, I agree with the whole picking a settled team thing. I think that's something I've been criticising Unai Emery for throughout last season, and obviously I took lots of abuse for that, but I genuinely feel that was a problem. And I get what James is saying when he says that he had every right to try things and stuff like that, because it was his first season, but I just feel like you don't get that long to try things in modern football, and Arsenal are a club that needs to be in the Champions League, and I believe that his tinkering at times ultimately cost us a place in that competition. And I think that we would have had a much more exciting transfer window had we made the Champions League, due to the financial rewards for making that. But let's see how he does this season. I mean, although I criticised him last season, I was very clear that I'm not calling for his head at this stage. It's way too early to do that. And fingers crossed he does find the winning formula. But I just felt like there were too many issues, the same issues that we'd seen previously, and they hadn't been addressed, and I hadn't seen evidence of them being addressed. So that was really my concern. But I think, he needs to find a settled team, settle on a system that the players can learn like the back of their hand. If you think back to when Antonio Conte came in and won the league with Chelsea, he went in with a settled system, didn't he? And that was a system that was very different. Hardly anyone in the Premier League was playing with a back three before Antonio Conte came, but he embedded that. He went through the difficult periods at the beginning. I remember they got beaten by us, didn't they, that season, right at the very early stages. And he changed it from then, but he made that change and then he stuck with it. And that's the difference. There's no point in chopping and changing week after week after week, because you're not giving anything a chance to work, or for players to learn it, for players to embed it, etc. So that's a real concern of mine regarding Unai Emery, and I hope that that's something that he does put right next season.
I hope so as well, because I can't have another, as I've said off fan, away from this channel. This is the last opportunity where it's going to in a sense, to get in the top four, where it's so not easy, but won't be. It'd be like that, pretty much like last season, where you've got Us, United, Chelsea, because United are going through another transition under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, with how he wants to play football and this, that, and the other. Got Lampard coming at Chelsea, 1 year experience at Championship level, and then you got Tottenham losing looks like they're losing their back line all of a sudden, and we don't know. No one knows where they're going to replace them. Don't get me wrong, Tottenham have got a far better settled squad than us. This and all that, it pains me to say that, but after this season, I think it's going to be so much harder to get in the top 4 spots. And if we don't get it, if we can't get third or fourth, respectively, this upcoming season, I can't really see us pushing on for a fourth year of Europa League football, trying to get back into Champions League for a 4th year, and a 5th year, and a 6th year. We'll eventually turn into what Liverpool went through from the late 2000s up till what 2-3 years ago, where literally just the Europa League team occasionally don't get into the Champions League and they'll drop out, and it'll be another 2-3 years. And we as a club, especially with our fan base, how reactionary they are and how fickle they can be at times. We can't even afford it because of owner doesn't seem to want to invest and help out and get things back on track. But time, obviously, the next 2.5 weeks to 3 weeks are telling, because obviously our transfer window closes on the 8th of August. Because it closes the day before Liverpool play the opening game of the season for incomings, but outgoings to still go out throughout Europe. But yeah, I just want us to, for once, just go into a season ready. Get the signings in as quick as possible now. When do they come back from their tour of the States? Because we've got a couple more games over there, haven't we?
Yeah, we got Real Madrid and Fiorentina.
Fiorentina and then Real Madrid. I think because the Emirates Cup's at the end of the month, so they'll be back in the next week and a half, I'd say. So literally the second they get back, get all these deals that they've apparently got, get them over the line, get these players in, training with the players, get so they're settled and not literally lastminute.com, so they don't have next to no training with the player. Then come match day 1 on a Sunday against Newcastle, no matter who the manager is, that's going to be a tricky place to go to. And then when there's a shocker happens, we lose, and then going into the next game and Burnley at home, the pressure's on again a week later. You got bigger pressure than what it would be in the first place to get us up there, and you got Liverpool, and then after that you've got the two arguably toughest games you could ask for, with all due respect, in the sense of you're away to Liverpool at Anfield, which is notoriously, even under Wenger, most of his time there, was a notoriously difficult place to get even a draw, let alone a win. And then you've got Tottenham, the North London derby at home the week later. If we don't go into this season fighting and ready to go, it could be a difficult, really long, even longer season what we're expecting, because out of 12 points in their first 4 games, we'll probably lose to Liverpool, more likely, because it's away and our history there is abysmal. But it's the other 3 games. If we can't get at least 9 points from our first 3 games, with all due respect to Newcastle and Burnley, most out of the 3, you are asking for trouble, because then you're putting a target in your head, and then questions then get asked of not only just the owner or owners, because it's a company that owns us, but that's just not just and the board. You got the board, and also Emery, because this is the second season of his 2-year contract with an possible extension of a 3rd. If things don't go right this year, as we've said earlier in the show and other shows, by the end of the season, his contract could be not renewed, and he could be out of a job, and we could be back to square one, looking for someone else to come in. And if we don't get Champions League, is that person's coming into a club that's been in the Europa League for 4 years straight, and if possible, if you believe reports, especially this with this so-called £45 million budget that we've apparently got. If we're in the fourth year of it, next year it could be even worse. If a new manager, and then he can't get his players in, and you've then got the deadwood of the two previous managers that you don't prefer, you can't get them out because you've been told give them strings, see who hangs themselves. And plus, do you reckon, just before we wrap up, Mesut Ozil, because maybe on now, do you reckon he'll be still at the club by the end of the transfer window?
I think he will be. Yeah, I think he'll be at the club. I don't think he's going anywhere, to be honest. And I still believe that Mesut Ozil is a top quality footballer, and if you can find the way of including him in the team that's most effective, you'll get the rewards for that. And I think that my personal view is Emery mishandled that situation last season, and there were games where we could have done with him, then he was just sitting around doing nothing. So, it's really difficult because I know a lot of the fans don't want him anymore. I know that there's lots of talk about his wages, but for me, Mesut Ozil is still a top draw footballer. Ryan, I'm going to have to leave you, mate. But thank you so much, mate.
Yeah, cheers for coming on. I know I've pestered you for a while to come on. So
no worries at all, man.
Take your time out.
I'll let you guys enjoy the rest of the show and take care. Cheers, James.
Good to speak to you again, Harry. Keep up the good work.
You too, mate. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm now getting comments in the chat room saying I'm being a bit pessimistic. Basically.
Yeah, I was going to say what I'll do is I will start with the Ozil with what Harry said. I think Ozil will still be an Arsenal player come the end of the window, and we've just got to take it game by game. I know it's cliche, but it really is a long old season. I mean, you would never have said last season that we would go on a 22 match unbeaten run, would you? You would have never have said that last season, would you? So you don't know. You don't know what's around the corner. We could, by the same token, get a result at Anfield. It's not beyond the realms of possibility.
All I was trying to say is that notoriously, even under the previous regime, for only 20 years, we did have difficult times there. So it's no guarantee.
but you can't go, Ryan. You cannot go from giving one manager 22 years, far too long, to giving his successor only 2 seasons. As I say, I'm fortunate enough to interview managers on a regular basis, as you know. And when they come into a new club, what they have to do is they have to assess what kind of characters they've got. Like, for example, the ex-Feyenoord manager, Maurice Stijn, who's now managing in the United Arab Emirates. I remember him telling me when he arrived at the club, he said that there was characters that he wasn't impressed with. And he had to get them out first before he could start to get decent results. And the first season, they narrowly missed out on promotion. And in the second season, they became champions. So things do take time. I hope that Unai Emery has a very good second season and that he can hopefully trigger an extension. Because what can you do in 2 years when there's a mindset crept in of everyone being far too comfortable? It's very difficult to read that out. I mean, it's no coincidence that Koscielny's wanting out, and it's only the end of the first season after Wenger. Would Koscielny have said the same things if Wenger was still in charge? I doubt it.
No, as you said before, he was settled. He was comfortable for him.
Everybody was too comfortable. Everybody from top to bottom, everybody was far too comfortable. And Emery's trying to weed that out bit by bit. And I should say, I think it's going to be a long old season. We've got to go full pelt for the Europa League as well. We narrowly missed out on the final back in May. It's going to be tougher this time round, but let's go for it again. Let's try to win one of the domestic cups as well to prove that Emery can win with us. And we've just got to see how it goes. Just take it game by game. It's a long old season, as we know only too well, and we've also got to try to enjoy it. I was fortunate enough to attend 10 Arsenal matches last season of Emery's first season and to witness it firsthand. And that was very, very interesting and very, very special, especially coming from Amsterdam like I do for every game that I attend. And yeah, looking forward to the second season. And everyone's got to stick together, take it game by game, and I think we may well surprise a few people.
Also, before we wrap up as well, I wanted to ask you because there's been a report this week about Mark Overmars. I
Yeah.
want to know. I wanted to ask you if you believed it was to be true or just media trying to get clicks again.
No, he is extremely happy and extremely settled where he is, and he's doing a very, very good job. If you see, Frenkie de Jong has been sold for, I believe it to be I think it was
89 something.
Yeah, 84 million, I believe.
Yeah,
and that was obviously not all in one go, but in terms of add-ons and all that kind of thing.
Installments
And
rises up.
yeah, and Matthijs de Ligt as well has gone for 67.5. And but one thing Overmars has done extremely well is Ajax have always managed to contract the best domestic players here in the Netherlands, and that's what's coupled with the academy is really bearing fruit. For example, they will miss Matthijs de Ligt, but they also have in Kikpiri, who has experience playing for Heerenveen, a very good defender, and Kjell Scherpen as well, the goalkeeper. He's very young. He had a good season with Emmen last season. I think he'll give the goalkeeper Onana a run for his money. And yeah, it'll be very interesting. And they've got a good manager in Erik ten Hag. And yeah, I'm sure they'll be fine. But I can't see Overmars leaving anytime soon, especially with Edu signing with Arsenal. I can't see there being too much movement at that level in quick succession.
Also, just on an Overmars bit, there was another statement where apparent statement that he made where he's told Arsenal to sell Ozil and buy
Hakim Ziyech.
Hakim Ziyech.
Yeah.
Do you believe that to be true, or was that just? Do you think that just media just trying to get?
No, I don't think. I think he was just making the point that if that was him in charge at the club, that is what he would have done. And that's what I'm just making the point. I mean, Ziyech is a self-confessed Arsenal fan. If Arsenal come in for Ziyech, he would sign for the club. I mean, but there's been not that much interest.
Well,
there's been rumours of Sevilla. He turned down Sampdoria many years ago when he was at FC Twente, and it'd be very interesting to see what happens. But he could be very useful, Hakim Ziyech. He's got a tremendous eye for a pass. He's got a very good temperament as well. He's very calm, very relaxed. So yeah, we shall see what happens in that respect.
Definitely, and also another, just before we go as well, a play that you've been saying that Arsenal should sign, a former Newcastle player. I think he's been linked with a move away to, I think, back to Premier League or La Liga.
Sorry?
Yeah, I believe he's been linked with a move back to the Premier League, or was it La Liga, or both?
Thauvin?
Yeah, Thauvin, yeah.
Yeah, he was linked to West Ham, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But he's a tremendous player, and you think of his age as well. He's a very, very good player, and a very good winger, accurate crosser, physically very strong. So we shall see what happens. Ryan, it's been a pleasure. Great to speak to you again, and I shall speak to you again in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, definitely, and we'll sort something out before the season starts as well. So,
indeed, look forward to it.
I appreciate your time as well, James, as well.
Yeah, sorry?
I appreciate your time as well.
Yeah, of course, anytime. Yeah. Nice to speak to you. Take it easy.
And you.
Bye
Cheers.
bye. Up the Arsenal. Bye bye.
And that basically marks wrap things up now. Yeah. Well, basically, my next video now will be probably the next big story that comes out the club, really. And that will be either I'll, depending on the sort of enormity of the story, I'll try and get a guest on at the same time. So it's not just me rabbiting on, giving just my thoughts. It might try and get someone more upbeat than me, apparently. So yeah, and if obviously, in that case, that would be in terms of transfers or a development on the Koscielny situation, or more coming out from the Kroenkes in response to what's being said to them, if anything comes out on that. And then I'll be doing we'll make it an annual thing now, because I did it last year. So my annual season preview with myself, and I'll have about 4 to 5 other guests on, because it'll be a preview. Then time of season where I'll do that will be a preview or the season review. And I'll be getting onto that in the next couple of days, putting sounders out for guests, and then I'll be confirming that. The guest wise, I was got the guest list about 48 hours before the show, and that'll be going out on deadline day of the transfer window, so that'll be 8th of August. So it's literally days before Arsenal kick off anyway. And yeah, that'll be an interesting one to look at. If you have any ideas of what sort of guest who you'd want on as a guest on the show, either for the preview or going into the season itself, for match reviews or previews, this, that, and the other, comment in the section below, in the comments box below afterwards, and just let me know. And if I can get hold of them, I will do my best to get them on, be wherever it can be. So yeah. I also massive shout out to everyone that's been watching live and in the chat box tonight, chatting away about all the subjects that I've brought up. I hope you've all enjoyed the show. And if you haven't already, please, if you're new to the channel, you've just come across us at random, and you've liked it, please subscribe, smash the like button as well, share this about some more. So helps me get my profile out there, more people to subscribe, etc., etc. I'm looking to, as I said, provide more regular content between now and the season starting, and even when the season starts, I'm going to do a lot more than just one show a week. So get more content on that side of things as well. So yeah. And if anyone that's coming across this after this has been live, that's new, hasn't subscribed yet, please subscribe. If you liked it, also hit the like button, and also when you do subscribe, hit the notification bell as well, and it gives you the options of where you won't be notified sometimes, this, that, and the other. If you click the one where it says notify me every single time, you will not miss a single show or video that I put up ever. So yeah, again, thank you, and until literally say next time, keep calm, have faith, relax somewhat. And it says that, and I'll be a bit downbeat near the end there. Have faith in certain parts of the regime, and up the Arsenal basically.